There are a lot of video games. I mean, a lot of video games. Some of them are even good. Sometimes a game will come along through the sea of mediocrity and end up inspiring and defining an entire genre. Games like Wolfenstein, Pokemon, Metroid, and Super Mario Bros. Immediately jump to mind. But what about the RPG space? Here in North America, we might view Final Fantasy as the king of the console RPG. But there is a game that holds a much deeper cultural sway across the ocean. And that game is Dragon Quest. 1986's Famicom Japanese release, and later the 1989 NES North American release of Dragon Quest, or Dragon Warrior here in North America, brought together three monumental creators. Yuji Horii as the creative design, the legendary Akira Toriyama of Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball fame handling the art, and composer Koichi Sugiyama behind the music and sound. These three would create a game that would make a huge, lasting legacy, and a series beloved around the world for its writing, its incredible art, and its fantastic music. This might all sound like hyperbole, but it's very difficult to explain the impact that Dragon Quest had on the video game world. In so many ways, it defined systems in the JRPG realm that we still see today. The games carry a massive following and have an incredible number of novels, animes, manga, and spin-off game series that are still being produced today. I've never really played a Dragon Quest from start to finish. I've started 8 and 11 multiple times and dabbled in Heroes and Builders, but I've never really gone deep into the series. I want to, though, and I figured the best place to start was at the beginning with Dragon Quest I, or at least one of the several ports of it. So I snagged the Mrs. Animal Crossing themed Switch, spent $8 for the game, fired it up, and realized I made a huge mistake in my choice of platform. Dragon Quest follows you, the unnamed protagonist who is tasked by the King of Tantagel to defeat the evil Dragon Lord and restore peace to the kingdom. And while you're at it, if you could rescue his daughter, that would be great, but not necessary. Through the game, you'll travel through towns, collect some items for sages, maybe rescue the princess, prove that you're the legendary hero of the past, and eventually defeat the Dragon Lord and reclaim the Orb of Light, restoring happiness and peace to the kingdom for all eternity. The majority of your quest takes place on the overworld, where you are crossing forests, mountains, plains, and deserts as you travel. While out there, you will frequently be accosted by a variety of monsters with fantastic names like Bewarewolf, who will start battle sequences in their attempt to end the hero's quest. You'll also be plunging into dark dungeons, which are essentially monster-filled mazes that you'll need some form of light to help navigate. Towns will act as stops along the way for quests, and will offer services like inns and stores to heal up and get more strong, so you can continue along on your quest. In the towns, you'll also frequently meet generic NPCs who at the very least give some fun dialogue, and there is that one bard who plays heavy metal.
Brave wanderer, wilt thou hear a song? Excellent. I thank thee, friend, were it not for lovers of music such as thee, my quest to emulate the legendary bard Galen would lose all meaning. Oh, was that his song? Bro, have you heard of this band, Black Sunday, Black Sabbath? You would fit right in with them.
Battles take place in a straight-up turn-based combat. You go, they go. Back and forth until one of you lies dead on the ground staring at the sun one last time. The player is given the option to either bop the monster with your weapon, cast a spell, use an item, or flee. Since there's no party mechanic, it is always just hero, fighting a single monster, the combat is an extremely straightforward affair. Monsters will drop experience and gold when defeated, and they have absolutely no desire for self-preservation. A level 1 slime will 100% do his best to assault a level 30 hero decked out with all the best gear. And honestly, that can sometimes make the battles a slog when you're passing back over early areas of the game. But thankfully, there are spells that can help with that. On the plus side, the constant battles do give you a great opportunity to see some of Akira Toriyama's incredible artwork up close. The personality that he's given to each monster is still legendary today, and you almost feel bad turning them into beast-colored goo. Should Hero fall in battle, it is not the end. You are not warped back to your last save point or kicked back to your title screen. You're instead dropped back at the feet of a vaguely disappointed king, and sent back out with a stern warning to be a bit more careful next time. You are penalized by losing half of your money, but there's also an in-game bank system that you can store your cash in, so the hit isn't too severe. As someone who genuinely hates losing progress, I love this system. While you might get set back on your financial goals, your experience and character continue unchanged. And that means you're always at least making forward progress overall. Death is not the end, merely a setback. That's kind of it. Go around the world, kill things to get stronger, and buy better equipment to kill things to get stronger, to buy better equipment to kill things to get stronger, and eventually, you'll be strong enough to kill the Dragon Lord and see some credits. Yes, along the way you're doing some minor fetch quests to prove that you're a mighty hero of legend, but they're really just there to direct the player in the right direction to where the next block of monsters are and fluff up the game a bit. Right now, you're probably thinking that this game is a walking trope. And, well, you're not wrong. It's important to remember that this game also laid the foundation of what a classic console RPG is. The simplistic plot, along with the associated mechanics, are the foundation in which much more famous RPGs are based off of. Without Wolfenstein, we'd never have Call of Duty. There are two wonderful things that Dragon Quest does with these tropes, though. The first is rescuing the princess. Or not. You don't actually need to rescue her. You don't need to slay the dragon that kidnapped her at all. You can just walk right on by. She's a grown adult. Let her figure it out. The second is choice. Or, at the very least, the illusion of choice. There is a trope now simply referred to as, "but thou must." The game will occasionally throw the player choices with a simple yes or no answer, and one of them is legendary. If you choose to rescue the princess, at the end of the game, she'll ask you whether you love her or not, and whether she will join you on your next adventure. Pretty straightforward. Hey, lady, I just met you. Let's hang out for a bit first. Select no, and the game will slam you with one of the most legendary phrases in video games. "But thou must!" And then return you to the choice of yes or no. Or at least it should. In the Switch version they've changed it, and that's one of the many complaints I have about this version, but I digress. "But thou must" has become a trope for when games railroad the player into a specific choice, regardless of how they actually feel. You can "but thou must" for as long as you want. Keep slapping no for several hours, but eventually slap yes, and boy, you've made the princess a very happy lady. Here's the thing. Dragon Quest is simple, but I really enjoyed it. It was nice to step back from games that sometimes carry very heavy mechanics. It's cool to go back and see where all these things we take for granted come from. And it's really enjoyable to celebrate a game that brought some of the great creative minds of our time together, especially with the recent passing of Akira Toriyama. Playing it feels like a great way to help celebrate his life. While I don't know if I can recommend it as an entry point to the Dragon Quest series, or RPGs in general due to its stripped-down nature, I can recommend that any fan of the RPG genre get their hands on a copy and give it a go. It'll feel very familiar in how the mechanics function, but in a beautiful, streamlined way compared to many of the games it inspired. What I do struggle with recommending is how to play the game. Dragon Quest originally came out on the Famicom and the NES, and it's still extremely easy to find copies at a great price. From my conversations with the Jive Turkey, this is still the preferred way to play. The original version is known for being incredibly grindy. Monsters are tough and very stingy with their gold and experience, meaning when you move to a new area, you'll be spending the majority of the time mashing monsters into the ground and taking their pennies until you can afford to make it to the next town. In its era, this absolutely made sense. The combat is the core mechanic of the game, and it can be equated to jumping in a Super Mario game. Take most of those out and what's left? In a totally unexpected twist of the next paragraph of this script, that is exactly what happened with the Switch release. The monsters are now extremely generous with their gold and experience and practically beg to be bopped for their billions. The game is no longer focused on the joy of seeing Hero grow in power and be able to make it to new challenges, but more to showcase the designs of the original game in a modern era. This isn't meant as a ramble against how games like to hold your hand. I actually enjoy the accessibility of modern games, but more a look at what is actually left when you strip the challenge of combat out of the original Dragon Quest. Because the core focus of the game is the battle system and the leveling system, drastically reducing that showcases that the game is actually quite thin on plot, and there is absolutely no character development or world growth. This ultimately leaves the game feeling quite hollow and thin. On the plus side, the Switch did leave in some of the delightfully awkward ye olde English text they used with the original translation, though they chose a very bland font. At least the final dungeon does feel like a return to form. I found myself needing to fall back on grinding until I had no more magic to heal, then getting out of the dungeon, storing my money, and going back in. While it was nice to feel somewhat closer to the original version of the game, it was a bit of a culture shock after how generous everything was leading up to that point. Also, they just used the sprites from the mobile game, and boy, on a big screen do they look like shit. If I had to replay Dragon Quest, I would definitely find an NES and dust it off to play it, especially to feel how the two different versions compare against each other, and explore the world as it was seen in the eyes of kids 35 years ago. That said, I do fully intend to keep going, and will hopefully be cracking open Dragon Quest soon, just whichever version that might be. Thanks for joining me on this look back at the original Dragon Quest. It was fun to do, and it left me itching to push deeper into the series and really start to see how different parts of the genre evolved around the games. You can watch the complete set of streams for Dragon Quest by hitting the playlist buttons and going to the Dragon Quest playlist. It's not very long. And if you like what I do over here on the Dr. Dropkick Show, please feel free to do all the things you normally do on YouTube to show your support. Hey, thanks for coming out, being a friend, and we'll see you next time.